So for the week 6 forum, you're going to select a quotation from one of these 12 writers, and then you're going to reflect on that quotation on your writing style. So let's go over the article 12 Writers Discuss Writing by Richard Norquist. For almost a decade, writers on writing column at the New York Times provided professional writers with an opportunity to talk about their craft. 2 collections of these columns have been published: Writers on Writing, Collected Essays from the New York Times; Writers on Writing, Volume 2, More Collected Essays from the New York Times. Although most of the contributors have been novelists, the insights they offer into writing should be of interest to all writers. Here are excerpts from 12 of the authors who have contributed pieces to Writers on Writing. Geraldine Brooks. Write what you know. Every guide for the aspiring author advises this. Because I live in a long-settled rural area, I know certain things. I know the feel of a newborn lamb's damp, tight, curled fleece, and the sharp sound of a well-bucketed chain that makes as it scrapes on stone. But more than these material things, I know the feeling that flourish in small communities, and I know other kinds of emotional truths that I apply to my writing. So that's from Geraldine Brooks. Richard Ford. Beware of writers who tell you how hard they work. Beware of anybody who tries to tell you that. Writing is indeed dark and lonely, but no one really has to do it. Yes, writing can be complicated, exhausting, isolating, abstracting, boring, dulling, briefly exhilarating. It can be made to be grueling and demoralizing, and occasionally it can produce rewards, but it's never as hard as, say, piloting an L-1011 into O'Hare on a snowy night in January, or doing brain surgery when you have to stand up for 10 hours straight, and once you start, you can't stop. If you're a writer, you can stop anytime, anywhere, and no one will ever know or care. Plus, the results might be better if you do. Richard Ford. Allegra Goodman. Carpe diem. Know your literary tradition. Savor it. Steal from it. But when you sit down to write, forget about worshiping greatness and fetishizing masterpieces. If your inner critic continues to plague you with invidious comparisons, scream ancestor worship and leave the building. Mary Gordon. It's a bad business, this writing. No marks on papers can ever measure up to the word's music in the mind, to the purity of the image before it's ambushed by language. Most of us awake paraphrasing from the Book of Common Prayer, horrified by what we have done, what we have left undone, convinced that there is no health in us. We accomplish what we do, creating a series of stratagems to explode the horror. Mine involve notebooks and pens. I write by hand. Kent Haruf. After finishing the first draft, I work for as long as it takes to rework my drafts. Usually that involves expansion, filling, and adding, but trying not to lose my spontaneity. I use my first draft to make sure everything else has the same sound and spontaneity. Alice Hoffman. I write to find beauty and purpose, to know that love is possible and lasting and real, to see daylilies at swimming pools, loyalty and devotion, even though my eyes are closed and all that surrounds me is a darkened room. I wrote because that was who I was at the core. And if I was too damaged to walk around the block, I was lucky all the same. Once I got to my desk, I started writing. Elmore Leonard. Never use an adverb to modify the verb said. To use an adverb is a mortal sin. The writer is now exposing himself in earnest, using a word that distracts and can interrupt the rhythm of the exchange. Walter Mosley. If you want to be a writer, you have to write every day. The consistency, the monotony, the certainty All vagaries and passions are covered by this daily reoccurrence. William Soroyan. How do you write? You write, man. You write. That's how you do it. It's the way the Old English walnut tree puts forth leaf and fruit every day. If you practice writing faithfully, it will make you wise. Paul West. Of course, the writer cannot always burn with a hard gem-like flame or a white heat, but it should be possible to be a chubby hot water bottle rendering maximum attentiveness in the most enterprising sentences. Donald E. Westlake. In the most basic way, writers are defined not by the stories they tell, or their politics, or their gender, race, but they are defined by the words they use. Writers begin with language, and it is in that initial choosing, as one sifts through the lushfulness of our English, the choice of vocabulary, grammar, and tone, the selection of palette, that determines who's sitting at that desk. Language creates the writer's attitude toward the story he tells. Eli Wiesel. Acutely aware of the poverty of my means, language became an obstacle. At every page I thought, that's not it, so I began again with other verbs and other images. No, that wasn't it either. But what exactly was that it I was searching for? It must have been all that eludes us, hidden behind a veil so as not to be stolen, usurped, and trivialized. Words seem weak and pale. So what you're going to do is you're going to choose just one citation from one of these authors to explain your writing style. So I chose Write What You Know. And then a sample post would be Write What You Know. And then I agree with that particular citation because only you know the life of your story. And so when I write about what it's like to be Asian American and my particular life story, then I know all the nuances and emotions that go with being Asian American and what it feels like to be an other. We're going to discuss more about what it feels like to be an other in the week 7 lecture. But for this lecture, you just have to choose. So that's my sample post. I would choose Geraldine Brooks, Write What You Know. Now for you guys, which author matches your writing style? And you choose a citation and write about it. And so that's going to be the topic for this week 6 discussion forum. If you have any questions, feel free to email me.